So, yeah, me too. It I had a lot of, it was very difficult getting there and sticking to my decision to go and not having flown in 4 years. And fortunately, my colleague and I were able to travel together, which helped getting out of the house. Bert was not having a good time before I left. He was feeling really ill and of course didn't want me to go at some level. So I felt that pull, but it was really a gift. And this charge came through a week ago Sunday. We decided that instead of doing a morning davening with, the way we usually do it with singing and all of that, that we would just have an embodied morning davening, which was not everybody's cup of tea. It's still, for these younger, some of them they're carrying so much trauma, some of them. And even though they're aware of it, and some of them are disabled. That's part of their way of thinking of themselves. And they aren't necessarily visible disabilities, but autoimmune kinds of things, and years of gender dysphoria and various things. So, but this came through and I shared it with them, and I think it was very powerful for all of us to hear this. I'm going to read it with you, read it to you. I called it the charge. This is our charge. It is not a betrayal of your ancestors to become present and to feel well settled and at ease in and with your body. It is not a betrayal of your ancestors to become present and to feel well settled and at ease in and with your body. It is what they wish for you, your well and bright ancestors. It is what they want to teach you, their deepest and most aspirational yet simplest legacy. Vayitzer Yodhe Vavhe Elohim et ha'adam afar min ha'arama vayipach be'apav nishmat chayim vayihi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. And cosmic love force formed the earth being from dust of the earth and breathed into its nostrils the soul breath of life. So the earth being became an ensouled aliveness, a living embodiment, an alive breather. That is there at the root of our tradition. And the scholarship that I've read, and from what we can feel and intuit in our early texts, is that there was no separation for our ancestors between body and soul and spirit. If one was breathing, one was an ensouled body, an alive breather, an ensouled embodiment. And we've, each of us in our own way, and all of our embodied spirits have really spent our lives one way or another trying to reclaim this legacy, and sometimes feeling that it isn't at some subliminal level, it's a betrayal of those who came before us to become more alive, more full, more whole. And it really touched these youngers, and I see them struggling so much. One of the women actually broke her foot during the retreat, just slipped off of an uneven step. So, and maybe you recall, I certainly recall when I first sort of re-entered Jewish spaces after many years of Buddhist meditation, it was almost intolerable, the level of disembodiment, which led to total messes around eating tables and people pushing and shoving each other to get to food, and people just without any sense of the space around them, even when they were praying, and their effect on other people, which for me were all indications of traumatic disembodiment. And that really is what our project is and has been. And I don't think it's the first time. There have been waves throughout this long history when there was more opening, more safety, more embodiment, more poetry, more art, and then it gets shut down and people go into their heads, and by waves of persecution and difficulty. So that was powerful for me to have that come through, to say. And I would say only half the cohort came to that session. Other people were sort of circulating around the edges. Some people walked out of it, not out of disrespect, but, they just, and one of the women who actually is, her family immigrated from Ukraine when she was 4. And she was not in the session, but she was somewhere, nearby. And she said, when I read this, it just like boomed out of, we were outside in this grove, and she said it boomed out and she heard it. And it was so powerful for her, even though she had chosen not to come to the session. So, yeah. Any thoughts or responses before we move on?
It's really helpful to hear that because of how difficult my relationship with my sister was, and what you also just said earlier about the oldest one carrying a lot of the. I've been working on that a lot, working on forgiveness and also working on understanding what her life was like. My parents had a baby who was a blue baby and only lived for a few days when she was about 2. And so both of her parents would have been gone, in physically and emotionally. And what that would be like for a 2-year-old,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I've just, besides whatever the ancestral patterns are, I've just been working really hard at empathizing with her and forgiving her. And that's been very, very healing for me.
Thank you. Yeah.
I would love it. Will you send that phrase to us when you send?
Yeah. I'll send this page to you. It's the charge.
Mm.
It's interesting. 2 things. Rabbi David Zaslow gave a shiur for the Jewish Renewal Community in Amsterdam, Beit HaChidush. And so I was invited, and I will follow up on that. But one of the, say, principles he mentioned about what is Jewish renewal, he mentioned liquidity or fluidity and movement, and that things are always in move. And he used, I will look it up, because I made a picture of one of his sheets. And I have to think of you, Diane, because he used, it's not a betrayal to your ancestors to feel joy. He used the word joy. And so I was immediately thinking about your whole, deep delving into all the qualities of joy. So that's one thing, he used that. And so that made me think about my loyalties or whatever. But to just jump, I'm so amazed to hear all this because I come out of that. I was like Reb Salman was the one who mirrored, you are loved, life is good. Goodness, your soul is pure, tehorahi. That truth or that inner wisdom he brought with him and mirrored that to me. So that part of me, that memory got activated. And that is my true healing. Otherwise, I could never do Teshuvah. I could never, and everything. And even today in the expression in the Zoom with about Reb Salman, I shared about names, because each year the ritual of what is the name I could add to my name in order to attune better to the coming year. So I was always had a game going on with Reb Shefa and with Reb Salman to find a new name. And one year I was very in struggle because of my mom being in her last years almost and being severe and judgmental and very harsh, not good in say aging and preparing for death. So I was in a big struggle as well. So I asked for more rachmanis, for more mercy, more compassion. So Reb Salman was listening and he said, well, what about rachamana? And I shrunk. I of course that's powerful, but I couldn't really receive it. So I shrunk, tightened, and Rebbetzin Eve was there too at that moment, and she looked at me and she said, "Well, what about Ruchama, which means the one who is forgiven?" And that totally opened my heart, because I had layers of memory and left over of feeling doomed of my mother and all the layers of being burdened and shame and guilt and whatever, the doom of not being forgiven. That a low ruchama of like the daughter of Hosea, and Lo Ami Spinoza, who was expelled. So that was a gate opener to me, Ruchama, and being forgiven. Also, that sort of gifts, I think the whole tradition, the lineage from the Baal Shem Tov, like the Teshuvah practices and all the calling on the Shekhinah, it is living from basic goodness. And the rest, all the other imprints and rest are just stuckness around life experiences we ought to go through instead of stay stuck in. So, yeah. But what a challenge is happening in that group for you. I really am so grateful. I'm not even knowing if I'm able to do that. I'm so grateful I'm out of there, that how to deal with it again and again and again.
Yes, lifelong, or as my teacher Bonnie Cohen would say, life's long practice, lives long practice. So welcome, Michelle. We're just, I think I'll read it one more time. We're starting into some work in a minute with the endocrine system again, but I just read this charge that was offered that came through to be shared with the cohort of Taproot last Sunday when we did an embodied prayer practice for our morning practice. And as we were moving into our bodies, I shared this, and you'll understand more, I think, if you get a chance to look at the recording later. But this is what we've just been responding to. It is not a betrayal of your ancestors to become present and to feel well, settled, and at ease in and with your body. It is what they wish for you, your well and bright ancestors. And that's a key there. And both Reb Tirza and my therapist that I was working with for a while, Jenny Freeman, both would speak about accessing your well and bright ancestors as not just staying present with the distortions that life brought upon the people that came before you and all of the challenges they faced that got embedded in their bodies, but opening yourself to the possibility of that they're either their essences or people who didn't have those challenges that are in that were your predecessors are there wishing for you that it, and telling you that it is not a betrayal to become present and to feel well settled and at ease, or as Corolla just taught, joyful in and with your body. It is what they want to teach you, and their deepest, most aspirational, yet simplest legacy. And then this is the quote from Genesis 2:7. And God, Yud He Vav He, cosmic love force, formed the earth from dust of the earth and breathed into its nostrils, the earth being, into its nostrils, the soul breath of life. So earth being is a translation of Adam, earth being, or as wilderness Torah folks like to say, earthling.
Yeah, earthling.
Cosmic love force formed the earthling, Adam, no gender, from dust of the earth, and breathed into its nostrils the soul breath of life. So if the divine is not gendered, then perhaps to be in the image of the divine is also not to be gendered at some level, and then choices are made. So that's where we have been. And what I want to suggest as we go into now, we're going to look at some pictures of the brain and the throat and the upper nervous system, the upper glands, I should say, that are associated, some of them very closely with the central nervous system. I want to just call our attention back to, I don't know how many years ago, when we were looking at Sefer Yetzirah together. And there are some, Sefer Yetzirah, like many books I read, is I just get stuck on one little section of it or one page, and I can't get beyond that. And I have no desire to go beyond that. I just want to stay with that part. And this image of returning to the center, with 5 on one side and 5 on the other side, like the fingers. And my Qigong teacher works with this movement. And it just really struck me. First of all the endocrine glands are either right on the center line or closely associated with it, with a pair of them on either side of the center line. And so I'm seeing, yes, of course, this is the organ system. I mean, these are tiny organs. We call them glands because that's a technical name for little organs that secrete hormones. Endocrine glands the hormones are secreted directly into the bloodstream and picked up by blood vessels. So that's one of the ways that you identify a gland, is it has a lot of blood supply immediately around it to pick up the hormones, which are then carried through the bloodstream to the body. So it's a different fluid transport system than the nervous system, which has the fluid of the nerve cells, the axons, the dendrites, and then the fluidity of the space between where a dendrite meets an axon or a cell body. It's called a synapse. But it's fluid filled, and there's a transfer across that synapse through the fluid. The endocrine system is all through the bloodstream. So we have these 2 different fluid transport systems, and they're quite synergistically related. The endocrine system is this, you could say, return to center. And so no wonder that what I experienced and what my teacher teaches is that the endocrine system is really a kind of keystone, if you will, between our physical bodies and our spiritual bodies, or our energetic bodies. So have you, whatever language resonates. You have to use many words, I think, in order to not be reductive, because these are things that are hard to talk about, and language can reduce it to something less than it is, than the experience is. So yeah, I just keep thinking about, so we're going to look at these glands now. Sometimes there's a front back, like a front and a back, as there are in all the spheroids. And that's true with the pituitary gland, has a front lobe and a back lobe. And sometimes there's a right and a left gland. But think about it, it kind of concentrates the energy. And so I've been thinking about, on a very embodied Kabbalistic level, that's what Teshuvah is, right? We can get way out there, and we can get very asymmetrical, more pulled in one direction or with one quality, and neglecting other qualities on the tree. But this return to center, and center being not a, place, but a relationship, a set of relationships, dynamic relationships. And my teacher, Bonnie, when they finally settled on the name for her work, didn't want to call it Bonnie Bainbridge Cohn-ism or anything like that. She wanted a more universal, generic name that could hold the breadth of the community and all the different learnings and researches that many people do, which has become part of the body mind centering work. And people protested body mind centering. What does that mean anyway? It's like, and no, this is for her, that was the perfect name. It's not about center, it's about being involved in the process of centering, which includes everything that's off center. And center can be anywhere. It can be, even with different length legs, or, twists in the spine. And how do we find a return to that dynamic fluidity that you were mentioning, Carola? And this for me is a wonderful image. And it's the place where I now start the new version of the embodied to fill in practice, which we won't get to today, but I hope to share that with you pretty soon, because it's been evolving for the past 20 years. So let's take a look at some anatomy. What happened here?
Yeah.
Why is this so big? There. Ah.
Wow.
And it is so intriguing, this monster you have.
Yeah.
It is so enlightening and transparenting and opening and moving, and you get parts off and on. No, it is exciting.
Yeah, and in a minute, I'm going to compare with the picture you sent me of the Eye of Horus. We'll look at that too. But I wanted to look at the neck and the head glands today, and then do a little bowing practice from different glandular centers. Bowing is one of, for me, the main embodied practices of all faith traditions. And it's been fairly much excised from Judaism. And it doesn't have to be done with big movement. It can be done very subtly, but we're going to work on it in a very subtle way that can be extended into full body movement, or you can just stay with the subtlety of it. But it's the subtlest movements are actually for me, the most powerful, the most healing. So I want to encourage all of us to, especially because many of us are dealing with aging stuff, to let go of the notion that if you can't do this big full body movement, that you're not moving. That's bullshit. The most influential movement, I learned this years ago from Elaine Summers, the originator of a somatic form called kinetic awareness, that the real healing and the real expansion of the range of our movement comes when we go to that smallest, most subtle movement. And then we move from there. And you just, when you get to an edge for yourself, instead of trying to push through it, you come back from that edge. And it only is gradually that the edge expands, which it almost always will. And this is a deep awareness practice and listening to the body. And that's really where the change comes. So let's look at the throat first. So for me, I've been thinking about, I don't know any better way to talk about this, but da'at being associated with both the throat and the third eye. So I've been thinking about an upper da'at and the lower da'at because it's way too big a leap in the body to go from right brain, left brain to right shoulder, left shoulder. There is way too much in between, somatically speaking, and anatomically and physiologically speaking. And I don't think it's an accident that in our embodiment of the tree of life, in that often, at least in the way I was taught it, people like skip over the throat, or the da'at is like some phantom sphera. The throat chakra, oh my God, look at everything that passing through the throat. And it's about expression and freedom of expression, power of expression. I call it the Mitzrayim of the body, because the vocal diaphragm passes, well, you can't see it in this model right now because it's behind these levels of connective tissue and cartilage, but it crosses inside here horizontally, but it's totally related to all the other diaphragms in the body, but it's the smallest one. So it's really, and that's where the vibration of the sound that might be traveling through your whole body or coming from a much lower place, from, say, what we call the shoulder diaphragm. Let me show you the shoulder diaphragm for a minute. There. So all these layers of muscular soft tissue that create this more or less horizontal weaving around the shoulder area, that we consider that in body mind centering another diaphragm. Anytime that the fibers run more horizontal, you can see some of them here. I want to see the deltoid, sorry. This is a female model here. There's some of the deltoid muscle, suprascapularis. I forget what they're all called now in a moment. Come on back, honey. There's also a lot of vertical fibers here too. Or the thoracic, the breathing diaphragm, or the pelvic floor. Those are more familiar. Or the tongue here in the base of the mouth, and muscles, but also the tongue itself form a kind of diaphragm. You can see a little bit here. They're more or less horizontal. Nothing is geometrically flat in the body. Everything's curved or figure eights, but so this little space of the throat, vocal diaphragm, is what makes the vibrations audible, and it's supported by all these other diaphragms. And then the glandular support for that is the thyroid here, the parathyroids on the back of the thyroid, So I'm gonna, let's see, take out a few nerves here and a few bones and see if we can find the parathyroids again. Don't know if you can see them too well, but there's these little dots, tiny dots, 2 on each thyroid, on each lobe of the thyroid, these little orange dots. So let me just isolate this for a minute. There's the thyroid gland, and there are the parathyroids on the back. So I mentioned that the thyroid supports the vitality of the voice, and the parathyroids, esoterically speaking, supporting the can't get the green color to go away. There. They support the refinement of the voice. And of course, glandularly, the gland has to do with metabolism, growth and the metabolism of certain minerals, the parathyroids. And then we had in body mind centering this non-traditional glands of the carotid body. So let me give you here the arterial right here in the bifurcation of the carotid arteries. Would be this glandular center here, which has to do with blood going to the brain. Just getting a sense of this. So, oops, I'm just trying to get rid of the green. There we go. So if you just bring your hand up to your own throat and find this point here is what we call the Adam's apple, and that's the front of the the laryngeal cartilage. It's called the thyroid cartilage. There's 2 cartilages there. And when you swallow, it moves up and down. So see if you can find that. That's the attachment for the vocal diaphragm. And it might be very close, for me it is. There's a lot of tension always there for me. It's might be very close to the base of your chin. And if you yawn, it can help that to relax the muscles holding it up, which are also swallowing muscles. It may be able to relax down a little bit lower. Just letting yourself yawn. So if you put a finger on either side of that point, you can keep one finger on the point and then put your thumb and middle finger on either side of it, and then make a little sound. You'll feel some movement, subtle movement there. And vibration. Um, um, See what it's like if you just start to gently nod, keeping your hand there, softening everything, all the muscles, everything around there, And imagine that you could nod from your thyroid a little bit forward, a softening and almost flexion slightly of your thyroid. And then a coming back up also from your thyroid. And you can try sounding gently through this movement, nodding in your own speed and coming back up from the thyroid. Um, just finding whatever pitch quality of sound works for you. Easy tongue. And then just pause for a moment. Let your head rest. Notice that perhaps your sense of where you come back to is not fixed, like a not fixed position for your head. Maybe you don't quite know where center is, quote, center. Maybe there's tension or sensation that you're aware of in other parts of your spine or your body. Just be with it, be with those, breathe. Then imagine that you're going to nod just from the parathyroids, those 4 little dots. See what happens. Do you tip the top 2 first, or do you draw down the bottom 2, or does something soften? What happens to the movement when you think about the nodding of your head happening, initiated from the parathyroids? And how far does the movement go? See when you know what the range is of the parathyroids. It's different from the thyroid, maybe, and different certainly from your spinal bones or your nerves. And feel free to make whatever sound wants to come out as you're doing that. It can help sometimes just to put your forefingers and your thumbs kind of on either side of your throat where there's 4 glands might be. I'm feeling a little bit of counter movement. So actually the bottom ones come upward as the top ones come down a little bit. Just seeing what support that provides actually for your neck. That counterbalance, counter movement of the lower 4 and the upper 4. So one more now, just resting minute to rest and breathe. If there are other parts of you that have gotten a little tense, I feel a little tension building up in my middle spine and kidney area. It wants a little attention, so just allow that, perhaps somewhere else for you. And you could do this standing, sitting, or even lying down. Maybe shoulders, the diaphragm has accumulated a little bit of tension that you want to release. We'll do one more with the one more experience with the throat here, which is coming to your carotid body area. So that would be finding the angle of your jaw on either side with your fingers, and then coming a little bit down from that. Sort of, there's almost a crease in the neck. You could just trace down with your forefinger a little bit, maybe half an inch, 3/8 of an inch, and then gently, so gently, just pressing a little bit in. Very little pressure, just like in craniosacral work, we talk about the weight of a nickel on the body. And then from that place, initiating a little bit of a nod forward. And then coming back up, just a little bit of, it's like that place is the fulcrum for your movement. I'm just resting my other fingers and thumb on my neck and chin a little bit so they don't get tired. And this, the carotid bodies, Bonnie calls the glands of silence, while the thyroids and parathyroids support the voice. The carotids, in her way of experiencing it, support the silence between the sounds that enables us to hear words. If there were no silence, it would just be a constant cacophony of different pitches and vibrations, sounds, which scientists tell us that there is that kind of white noise going on in the universe. Constant sound vibration. So the silence allows us to carve words out of the sound matrix of the cosmos. Just again, noticing any tension that might be building up anywhere as you do this. Pause and release what you can that's not needed. And then just gently releasing your hands if you haven't already, and finding some, whatever your body wants to do at this moment, whatever movement. Breath and sound. What does it mean to return to center, to embody the teshuva process of returning to the deep listening of our dynamic, ever flowing center as it's implanted, the life that's implanted within us, the chiyut, the life force that is held in suspension in this physical form. So we're going to pause and come back together and have a little feedback before we then use our last period of time to go into the head. So just take a moment, see if there's any rebalancing or stretching or moving that needs to happen more. Sounding integration. I feel like when we work this way, when we play this way, it becomes easier and easier to imagine, to notice that every material thing is alive. Rocks, trees, even, seeming inanimate things all are holding in suspension life force. And first world peoples know this. Shamanic teaching teaches this. And when we approach our bodies this way, it decentralizes our sense of who we are in the cosmos, I think. And it's very important for the healing of our planet that we can reclaim this way of relating to ourselves and to all matter. Yeah, so it's any responses or questions that came up during that?
Yeah. Well, this ending, I remember working with Shyam Bhatnagar, who is a sound chakra healer, that he always, after any mantra chanting or whatever, always we did this gesture, you know, like integrating or letting it flow or flow down, almost not even touching, but always around, say, around the sides, here the sides. So in a way, it remembers the sense of a cylinder. How you call it? A cylinder? What's the word?
Cylinder.
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 Yeah.
So that is not flat, but a like a bottleneck in a way, you know, but that can open. I have very often, because of hearing aids, big trouble with sound and digesting noise in a way. And the other day I realized that it had to do with my jaw and throat, not so much my ears, but somehow I would try to push it out. You know, I don't know. I would have when I didn't want a sound or something, I said, oh, I discovered that I was getting tight because I didn't want to hear from here. I was amazed. So now, oh, what is this? You know, I for me, it's totally new that what karate bodies, I don't know what that is.
Carotid. So that's the arteries here that go up into the brain are the carotid arteries.
Arteries.
So
Okay.
same word. The little glandular center is in the carotid artery splits into two branches right here, and right in the crook of those two branches is a little glandular center. It's called the carotid bodies, and they're called bodies because the hormone hasn't been identified yet, but it has to do with the blood that's going to the brain. I think also with sugar metabolism, because the brain needs a lot of energy, a lot of nourishment. And I'll have to check again what we think that does. But I'll just say process-wise, Bonnie has often identified glandular centers in the body before Western medicine identified them. And then, but she feels them and she looks at these areas where there's a lot of blood supply, and it seems like that's a glandular area. And esoterically, it's very powerful. And then later, the medical research finds the hormone or whatever. That happened with the pineal gland. And there are other, and it happened with what Bonnie calls the heart bodies, which were then identified as these Purkinje fibers in the heart. So, yeah. Thank you. Any other responses or questions?
I felt an incredible amount of more movement from the parathyroids. And I have like the classic 50-year huge goiter that I've had forever. And so, the tissue is really different there. When I was moving from the parathyroids, an amazing amount of range of motion and lack of neck tension to move from the parathyroids instead of from the thyroid gland. And I felt like I didn't even have to really hold my head up. It was just kind of more normal to not use those muscles that tend to have to hold my head, and which weighs a little more because of this goiter. So it lightened things up, but it like just that natural curve flowing down really made a difference coming from parathyroid. Yeah.
So the goiter is an enlarged thyroid gland, right?
Yes, it's multinodular. Lots of nodules of the thyroid are much larger. Yeah.
And so part of what that says to me, Simona, is that when something is, once any part of the body is doing a lot of extra work, that's when it manifests symptoms often. So, I mean, I've said this many times, I think from a body mind centering point of view, you look at what else might be underused that could rebalance the thing that's working so hard. So that's what I hear when you share about, oh, this is maybe the parathyroids are key to relieving something for the thyroids.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rivka.
Yeah, I would second that, what Simona just shared. Oh, it's so profound to move from that deep internal place. And I mean, just even now as I'm speaking, I just feel things have just opened and widened. And I'm so aware of how I overuse. I mean, you can see, I mean, look at how overused and stringy, and this whole area is. And yeah, I'm going to play with this because it's like what you said, Diane, like you don't know, like after you go through this, like where's really center now? Center's been this holding, that's not center. And I mean, I just feel like my voice just totally dropped and released, and this connects to that ancestral trauma piece that we were talking about much earlier, which Michelle, if you watch the recording, you'll hear about. There's so much that's just here on so many levels. And I guess the question I have, Diane, is that anytime I do this work, I'm so open and sensitized and tuned in a different way. And what you just said, like we need this awareness. It's important to reclaim the healing of ourselves and the planet. And yet there's such a sensitivity of how to then, where I'm going with this, how to then negotiate and go into the world that doesn't, I don't know. I mean, it feels like the defense, like how to go through that without the defenses going up, or I don't know. How to navigate it. I mean, that's the question I'm going to be living in. Like, how do I come from this deeper place without letting, how do I have the proper filter? Maybe that's it.
Yeah, this question comes up for the youngers as well. What kind of protection can we cultivate spiritually, physically, even, for me, the key of all this, what helps me is this, teaching from the Baal Shem and others about Ratzo V'Shov, which I have mentioned many times, running and returning. We have so many opportunities. I mean, our whole prayer liturgy is set up to help us return, to help us do teshuva multiple times a day. And maybe I'll use the rest of the time today rather than going into the head. We'll have to save that because there's not time to do it. It's so beautiful and so complex. Bowing from the throat today, but yeah, Carola.
Yeah, because I realized in my Feldenkrais practice, a lot has also to do with lengthening, like the spaciousness here. And that for me only can happen when I'm rooted on the pelvic floor in the pubic bone or my sit bones. And today, when we were doing this, my feet turned warm.
Turned warm.
Warm, yeah, we're energized.
Perfect.
So I realized, oh, interesting. When this got soft and more open, maybe that is a grounding. I experienced it as a grounding. I'm not holding or defending and keeping my head up or anymore. This was getting more soft and open.
So,
And
so what I'm hearing is that you were able to feel more connectivity with the ground, with the earth, which
Yeah.
is a kind of protection. It's a support. It's that sense of
Yeah.
supported from underneath. Yes,
Yeah.
there's many ways. That's a powerful. Thank you for sharing that insight. And I often use Reb Sheffa's energy recharge practice. So maybe we can do that together, but also I can send you the link to her website where she explains it fully. And it's coordinated with a chant from Psalm 67, which is the psalm that's associated with the counting of the Omer. It's part of the liturgy for counting the Omer. And I use that a lot. I used it when I had to drive to Los Angeles and back from San Diego for years and years. I would do it around my whole car. And sometimes it was very exhausting to try to include my whole car in the golden egg of energy. And Sheffa said, well, don't do the whole car, just do your body. And I said, but I want to protect my car. I need to protect my car too. So maybe we'll close with this practice and then I'll send you a link and you can continue to work with it. But yeah, I mean, I think we need to keep gathering a library of practices that help us return. And also a lot of compassion for ourselves when the old tension reasserts itself because you're not safe. I mean, I was a wreck after the plane trip to Albuquerque because we landed in the afternoon and no, the pilot never said that there was going to be all this turbulence because there are updrafts in the summertime from Albuquerque and it's a high altitude. And it felt life-threatening. And it didn't matter what you tell your body, oh, it's just turbulence. Your body thinks this is the end. So it took me 4 days to recover from that, my neck to recover from that. I thought I was having a heart attack. I had so much pain as my neck was unwinding in the middle of the night. So we have to have compassion on ourselves that, we don't feel safe a lot. So how can we develop a more and more of a tool bag or a doctor's bag of practices that help us return, or just even checking in with friends, and seeing a friendly face, vagus nerve, looking at somebody's face and regulating ourselves. This practice starts by imagining a point of light in your low belly. So if you want to do it with me, it just takes a few moments and we'll close with it. Breathing into the center of where the hara, lower dantian, this would be a point halfway or so between your navel and your pubic bone, and then right in the center of your body, deep in the center. You visualize a point of light, and we're going to draw with that point of light. We're going to draw right up through our central channel, up to the heart, a line of light, maybe golden light, or white, whatever color comes to you. And then continue drawing up through from your heart through your upper chest, right through your throat, the center, behind your thyroid gland, where we just were, up through the center of your head, and up to a point, perhaps a foot above your head or so. And then I imagine spinning like a beehive. This, you continue drawing with this point of light, a beehive around your body, or an egg-shaped oval about a foot out from your body. And just visualize that. If you're good at visualizing, or sense it, all the way down, coming all the way around you, enveloping your head area, your shoulder area, your torso, arms, everything is in the inside of it, all around down your pelvis. Keep drawing at the speed, the way that works for you, down around your legs, until you come to rest with this beehive shape, this ovoid shape, at a point about a foot below your feet, maybe under the floor if you're got your feet on the floor. And just when you can keep your eyes closed doing this, when you have finished that part of the visualization, just put a thumb up. Good. And then you can just rest there, and I'm waiting for everybody to arrive. Yeah. Then we're going to keep drawing from that point below your feet. So the challenge of drawing that beehive is that there's no chinks or holes in it. You draw up from that point below your feet back to the point in your pelvis. This line of light. And then back up to the point in your heart. And from your heart, that light begins to expand in all directions and fill the egg or beehive shape that you've created around yourself. Behind you, above you, below you, around you. Golden light or white light or whatever color light you've been drawing with fills the egg. Notice if there are areas of the egg that are harder to fill, and spend a little extra time and breath there. And when you finish filling the egg, just put your thumb up. Take your time. Great. That's the visualization. And Shefa coordinates it with the chant, and it's a verse from Psalm 67, verse 2. I didn't print it out since I didn't know we were going to do this, but the words are Elohim. You can repeat them after me, just muted. So Elohim Yichanenu. So God, be gracious with us. Vivarchenu, and bless us. Vivarchenu. Ya'er panav itanu, and light up your face with us. Selah, may it be so. And here's the melody. Elohim Yichaneh Don't try that much with me. We'll start a little bit higher. It was kind of low. Elohim Yichane. Next part. Vivarchenu. Again. Vivarchenu. Last part. Yair panavitanu. Selah. Again. Yair panavitanu. Selah. Whole thing. You can just follow along. Elohim Yichane. Vivarchenu Panavitanu Selah. So I'm going to do it again. You do it with me. And right now I'm going to pay attention as I do it to my throat, my thyroid, parathyroid, carotid. I'm going to put my hands there even because we're now doing something with our voice. I'm just trying to allow the softening, the lengthening, the ease, whatever you felt when you did the bowing, to be as present as possible as you vocalize, which may mean vocalizing much more delicately or quietly or loudly. I don't know what it'll mean for you. And do this once more. Breathing. Elohim Yichane. Vivarchenu Yair panavitanu Selah. Breathe. So the final, there's two more steps. We'll just do one more today, right now, which is to coordinate the chant with the visualization. I'll tell you how it goes. Starts with the point of light in your belly, and you draw up to your heart, and then draw up through your torso, through your head to the point above your head on the Elohim. So it's Elohim. And the Yichanenu, be gracious with us, is the beehive. Yichanenu. So you can see this is much faster than we did the visualization, but you can find your own way with it. Then Vivarchenu and bless us is in two parts. First part, you draw Vivarche up to your belly, from the bottom point up to your belly. Nu, carry it up to your heart. And then Ya'er Panav Itanu Selah is the filling of the egg with light in all directions. Ya'er Panav Itanu Selah. So we'll try it once, kind of at the speed of chant. And of course, when you work with it on your own, you can find how to work with it. The idea is we're surrounding ourselves with this egg, this beehive of light. I love the beehive imagery. I don't know if Shafi uses that, but I use it because, bees are the symbol of the goddess and also associated with Sarah, the bee goddess, the bee priestess. the bee priestesses. So that wisdom and that the gifts of bees comes in here too for me. So let's try it once. One wants to close here. So you start in the belly, and I'll do the chanting, and just follow it. It'll be my rhythm, but we'll try it together. Elohim. Vivarchenu. From the heart. Yael Panavitanu. Selah. So our essence and our gifts can come out through this egg, and we can receive the goodness, but we're protected in some degree from that which is difficult, troublesome, that we don't want to absorb. And yeah, Shefa. I mean, Ahuva.
I just wanted to share that this must have come from Bahira, from Arika, because this is an Arika practice that we used to do, that we still do, but taking Arika.
Yes, and I recall hearing Shefa say that when I first learned it from her. Yeah. So the final version is to do it just with the breath and the visualization, and it's 2 breath cycles. And after chanting, doing it in silence is powerful. So it's breathing in, out, 2-part in breath and out. But I'll send you the link, or you can just go to Shefa's website. It's called the Energy Recharge, and it's under the Psalms practice. So, okay, well, hopefully next time we meet, we'll really move into this amazing head and look at the structures of the thalamus, hypothalamus in relationship to the head glands, and the bowing from the head. So there's several bowing practices. I don't know if I brought this to us. I think we have done it, but there's bowing from the heart, bowing from the throat, bowing from the head, each one different. And just think about next time we do our prostration practice, whenever that is, on Yom Kippur, or if you're fortunate enough to be in a community where you can do it every time you do the Baruch Hu, full prostration. But even a subtle bow, you can think, where am I initiating that from, and what wants to be released today? Do I want to move from the heart, from the throat? Does my brain need to bow and lead the bow? So thank you, everybody. Let's unmute. And
When is the next date?
yes, I will tell you the next time we meet. We've only been meeting every other month, so August 27th, same time, 11 to 1:30 Pacific US time is our next time to meet. And that will be, taking us into Elul, and perfect time to work on teshuva from our brain and head glands.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was great to be with you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful weekday, Sunday, and love you all.
Thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing the recording.
Bye.
Adios.